Hello, my name is Alan Fuller. I want to talk to you today about period correctness. And as I'm sure you know, period correctness simply means that in a historic exhibit, which is being attended by the general public, the artifacts and the costumes and the tools and the materials will all be accurate to the period that's being portrayed. So for example, if we're doing a historic event in Coloma, say 1852, the things that are seen in that exhibit will be more or less from the year 1852. They'll be accurate and they'll be acceptable. Now, obviously, that's going to be only partly possible because there are always a lot of modern intrusions, particularly in a park like this with a highway running right through the middle of everything. You can't shut out the noise of the traffic. You can't shut out the people walking by with picnic baskets or modern garish clothing or any kind of modern intrusions. You'll hear the airplanes going over. And of course, it won't be possible to control any of that. So you may wonder, well, why do we bother to control any of it then? Why is it even possible to conduct a historic exhibit in a situation like that? And the answer is something professionals call suspension of disbelief. And it's something we human beings do automatically and gladly and very willingly and always have. And if you think about it enough, you'll realize that we do it all the time. We do it even in social situations. We don't allow ourselves to indulge in much skepticism about things if there's no point to it. You see, so if you go to a play, say, and you see these people come out on the stage and they're portraying a scene from, I don't know, a Shakespearean scene from that period. They'll be dressed in costumes and all that, but you won't think, wow, wait a minute, that's just a modern stage. Those aren't real people up there. Of course, nobody bothers doing that. Instead, we suspend our disbelief and we willingly allow ourselves to be drawn into the scene and into the play, into the story, and into the plot. The same thing happens when we go to a movie. We don't think about light being projected onto a blank screen. We willingly watch a television program and become engaged with the story without thinking of the machinery. A magic show is another good example. We all know that the magician is just playing tricks on us. We all know he has some secret way of, he has some secret spring hidden in his wrist, you know, that makes the thing work. But we don't think about that. We enjoy the trick and we laugh. And well, the point is in all of this, whether it's a historic scene or a magic show or a video game or a puppet show, we suspend our cynicism, we suspend our skepticism. We all participate willingly, gladly. We ignore reality. It's a very human thing to do. And we all love to do it. And there's one other thing though, we kind of get disappointed and even a little bit resentful when it's spoiled for us, right? So, for example, think of the Shakespearean play that I mentioned. So what's being portrayed is late 16th century, perhaps, and everybody's in the right costume, and they even may have the right kind of walk and the right kind of talk. The props are all right. The audience is being carried back centuries to that medieval period. And one actor who has a smaller part and didn't practice enough and didn't think ahead walks out onto that stage wearing a digital watch on his wrist. It destroys the play. It ruins everybody's suspension of disbelief. Nobody can believe what just happened. Nobody pays any attention to the dialogue anymore or what's happening with the plot. They're all thinking, look at that guy on the stage wearing that digital watch. As all everybody can think about is that one little mistake. So we suspend our suspension of disbelief under those circumstances. The same thing might happen when a magic trick fails. You know, the little spring in the wrist breaks, perhaps, and the trick is revealed, and the joke is spoiled, and the magic show is destroyed. So there's a bit of indignation that sets in. People don't like it because they enjoy their suspension. They enjoy being carried away into a different place in a different time and a different set of people. And when something is done to destroy what's happening, it makes people resentful and indignant. So we ask you not to break that fragile spell. It seems a minor point, but it turns out it's not, and this has been a consistent problem in historic sites all across the country, for all I know, all around the world. When staff or docents or volunteers make a simple mistake that didn't need to be made, it has a very damaging effect on the whole scene. Now for us, I'm not simply talking about first-person interpretation. I'm talking about third-person too. One of our historic events, for example, might be docents in costume demonstrating crafts or activities from the time period. But we're not in the time period. We're not saying, I do this activity on a daily basis. No, we're saying the people in the gold rush did it this way, and I'm going to show you how it was done in those days. Even under that circumstance, we need to have very accurate personal appearance. So what I'm talking about is the person themselves, the costume, the accessories, maybe what people are holding in their hand. Farther away from the personage, I think, the more leeway is allowed with historical inaccuracies. But a human being needs to be accurate. That, I think, is the point that I'm trying to make. Don't be misled by all the modern intrusions into the scene. It doesn't give the docents or the volunteers or the staff leeway to make any adjustments in the way they look, because the person themselves has to look exactly correct. So you must take this seriously. There's been a lot of mistakes. I've made mistakes like that. We all have done. And nobody's going to be too hard on you when you make your mistake, because we all have done it. I can tell you a mistake that I remember making, and I'm still kind of wince when I think of it. I was walking across the park here behind the museum into the historic tent town, and I heard the familiar voice of Miss M. She was kind of the docent leader in those days, very effective, very dynamic, and hardworking, and everybody loved her. But I heard the voice of Miss M. Alan! And I froze in place, and I looked down, and I was holding a styrofoam cup. Coffee's my drug, and I needed some coffee. I went to the Weller House. I knew that's where it was. You get coffee in the Weller House. What they had was styrofoam cups. Well, I had a tin cup back in my bag. I just didn't think of it or didn't bother. I don't remember what went through my foolish head, but I picked up a styrofoam cup of coffee, and I came walking back into Tent Town with it. Big mistake. Unnecessary, foolish, and not to do again. I could tell you another experience I recently had. I went down to one of the California missions on a day that they were having a historic demonstration. Oh no, it was first-person interpretation that day. And they had, they had the Franciscan priest in brown robes. They had the captain of the guard. They had some Mexican soldiers. And they had some workers and laborers around the mission. They also had a number of people portraying the Indians, who, of course, were doing most of the work. And the one I want to tell you about, though, was the weaver. She was in the weaving shop, and she was telling visitors, including myself and my wife, when we went in there, she was telling us about how the blankets were made. She described shearing the sheep, washing the wool, carding, spinning the wool, and then finally the last step, weaving the wool onto a loom to make blankets. She described all this very well. She had really good speaking skills, very good presentation skills, very coherent, very enjoyable, and I learned a lot from her. And I didn't mind that she was portraying an Indian and yet had a European features. White skin, blonde hair. The costume was okay. I wasn't bothered by the costume. It was homespun, and I didn't pay much attention to it. The thing that caught my attention was those glasses. She was wearing a pair of modern glasses. I couldn't get past it. As good as she was, I could not get those glasses out of my mind, and I couldn't stop thinking, why is she wearing those glasses? Surely she's not so incapacitated that she couldn't do this without wearing glasses. I found it very, very distracting and very disappointing. As good as she was, it would have been at least twice as good without the glasses. So those are two simple examples. And like I said, we've all made them. What else can I tell you? You know, when you're a docent in a historic scene, you're part of a bigger fabric, like the context of everything that's seen by the visitors when they come into the park. The museum, the various exhibit buildings, the historic structures, the mining equipment, the sawmill, the film in the museum. It's all part of a piece, right? It all works together to make a complete picture. And then when that visitor who's having seen all those things walks into the historic tent town and sees you in your historic costume, you add to that context. And it reinforces what the visitor has seen and makes it better and makes it more complete and more understandable and gives the visitor a better experience. But when you make a mistake in costuming, it's going to have the exact opposite effect. Not only will it diminish your appearance, but it will diminish the validity of the rest of the context that they've seen that day in the park. I hope that makes sense. One other way of looking at this might be for you to consider just going out to dinner, maybe to a neighborhood party, maybe to an office party, where you want to look nice. You know, you want to be presented to your friends in the correct visual way. So when you do that, you pay attention to everything on your person. You know, a man might, for example, make sure that his belt is the same color as his shoes. And a woman might make sure that the jewelry she's wearing on her ears matches the costume or works with it, that the colors don't clash, the patterns don't clash or contrast too badly. So you pay attention from everything, from the top of your head down to the floor. You think about each aspect of your appearance before you go out. We would just like you to take that same approach when you do historic reenactment or historic interpretation of any kind, to pay attention to your complete costume and examine in your mind very quickly everything that you've got on, so that you don't wind up with one silly mistake, like something made out of plastic, for example. Completely unacceptable, just completely wrong. Everybody knows what plastic looks like, and everybody knows there was no plastic in the gold rush. So when you come to the park to do a historic reenactment of any kind, make sure your costume is going to work with the event. It's not about you. It's not about how you look. So don't even view it as a costume. View it as part of your kit, part of your tools, part of what you've memorized, part of the materials that you may be using to demonstrate. Don't just dress up. You know, don't enjoy the sensation of how it feels to wear something fun and different. Because if you go about it that way, you may be making a mistake. It's not play, it's very serious stuff. And everything you do is going to have an impact on everything else that's done. We're telling you all this today because it's so effective when it works. You know, when everything comes together, when everybody's costume is right, the interpretations are right, the visitors' faces reflect the fact that everything is going right, and everybody feels better and better and better. It's just magical when it works. It's just wonderful when it works. And at the end of the day, everybody is just as pleased as can be and slapping each other on the back and saying, wasn't that fun? Gosh, we enjoyed that. That's what we want. We want everybody to have a good time. This is fun stuff. It's fun to interpret, it's fun to demonstrate, and it's fun for the visitors to come and see us work. So have fun with it, and make sure you're part of everything. Thank you.